Good evening and welcome to the very last edition of The Probe for the year 2020. What a year it's been. Tonight, we probe the head of Ghana's single largest institution, established under the 1992 Constitution with 216 offices dotted across this country, with the mandate to promote and sustain democracy and inculcate in the Ghanaian citizenry the awareness of their rights and obligations through civic education. I'm referring to the National Commission for Civic Education as the NCCE. We shall probe their role so far in Ghana's current quest for peace as well as justice after election 2020. Does it go beyond calls for the peace following the synchronized protest by NDC supporters after its flag bearer rejected the outcome of the polls? Madam Josephine Nkrumah, chairperson of the NCCE, is on The Probe tonight. We're live on the JoyNews channel, Joy 99.7 FM, and a dozen affiliates across Ghana. We're also on myjoyonline.com. You can also catch us on Joy Prime channel as well as DSTV channel 421. Go TV is 144. We're live on our various social media platforms as well. Don't forget, this is an audience-driven show, and tonight the show will only thrive on your questions. So please do so via WhatsApp is 055-1111-997, or just leave them on our social media platforms. We'll pick them up. I am MFR Paul. Welcome to The Probe. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us here on The Probe. We are live on the JoyNews channel, also on Joy 99.7 FM, affiliates across the country, DSTV channel 421, Go TV is 144. I am MFR Power, and tonight I'm hosting the chairperson of the NCCE, Madam Josephine Nkrumah, is our guest tonight. Thank you very much for joining us on tonight's edition of The Probe.
Thank you, MFR.
I hope we didn't cut short your festivities.
Not at all.
But how has it been the entire festive season? Have you had time to relax?
Not exactly. Probably after tonight, I'll get some time to rest.
Okay.
Yes.
So what have you been up to? I'm sure the NCC is on break also.
Yes.
Like,
we had a
like
little
the commission.
break. We are also having a little break. It's been a long year. It's been tough, and we need to retreat and regroup, so to speak, get re-energized and get ready for 2021. I think 2021 is going to be an exciting year. It's still a lot of unknowns. We are looking to see how, as a commission, we step up to our task, how innovative we can be, and how we can rise to the challenges that face us. And so, all in all, we are thankful mostly because despite the challenges we've had as a nation, as in the whole world, I think for us to be standing here in the last week of 2020, we must truly be thankful to God for that.
How long is your break?
We will come back on the 11th of January.
11th of January.
But even though officially that is what it is, in between we usually have engagements like I'm having today. So at the district level, at the regional level, our staff will be called upon to engage the citizenry. They'll be invited for functions and that sort of thing. And
so it's not a total shutdown?
No, it's not a total shutdown at all.
During the festive period?
No, it's not.
Well, so I saw your last communique, for instance, amongst others. You're talking about COVID. Of course, we'll talk about the situation in the country so far, which we were heavy on in terms of the tension and peace and all. But you had been talking about COVID also. This show, I always say, was born out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so you've raised concerns about the fact that schools may not be able to reopen in January, considering the rise in cases. Is that the case?
We didn't exactly say schools may not be able to reopen. I think that is really the purview of the executive to come out and tell us what it is. But we hold the view that if cases continue to rise like we're seeing, then there is that likelihood of schools remaining shut. Of course, whilst there are some of us who have the fortune and the privilege of enjoying school, virtually, there are many of our children out there in the hinterlands who have totally no access to school, no access to education, and so they're falling behind. And I think, therefore, that it's the responsibility of everybody to ensure that we contain the spread and allow for the country to recover and give ourselves the chance and the opportunity for children to access and exercise their rights to education. And so responsibility of everybody is important. What we do in adhering to the protocols, and we've especially called on leadership at all levels to comply with these protocols in a manner that allows people to follow, because they really are influencers, is of critical importance to the Commission at this time. So we'd like to see leaders in politics, in religion, in the arts and culture, whatever sphere it is, let us be seen to be adhering to the protocols. It begins to drive down the message for people to also take it seriously. And it is the responsibility of every citizen to understand at this point that our collective efforts is what ensures that we rise over and above this and are able to conquer this thing. We saw, you know, there was real optimism when it went all the way down, the infections, but the cases are rising again. I know people personally who've got the virus. For some households, it's a second time, and it is not pleasant at all. So everybody must step up to the task.
Has education not gone down?
Education has gone down. Education has gone down. The complacency has set in. Complacency in one respect, and I think to a certain respect, fatigue as well. I mean, people are tired. Should I enter every shop and wash my hands? Should I sanitize? Should I be wearing the mask? Oh, I don't feel comfortable with it anymore. The vinegar bucket has all but, you know, vanished around. And I think we need to then sustain education and continue to raise awareness for people to understand that, yes, we've come this far, but we could do even better. And when we see that we're beginning to slip backwards, then it's important for us to step up education and begin to sound the warning bells. And that is precisely one of the things that NCCE is doing. And so in 2021, it will be partly like mainstreaming COVID-related matters into all our strategies and engagements and all our platforms, so that people understand that until we have eradicated or brought it down to the barest minimum, it's important for us to know that it's alive. And with what you hear about the disease the virus mutating and being able to spread even faster, it's frightening for us. It took a toll on the country economically when we had a lockdown, but it was necessary to contain. But can we slip into that again? Are we that? I think we are fragile enough as it is. Our health systems, we're trying our best, but still, even though there have been some interventions, I think the key role is for everyone to step up to the task. We were confronted with, oh, is it really there? Yeah. There's people who actually thought that COVID was not there. People who said it was a rich man's illness. People who said it was from outside and all of that. But now you're not even hearing that, because even the people that you expect who know and understand this are beginning to, you know, just, it's a very laissez-faire attitude. And so we think that we need to step up conversation on this again. Even in the media, it's not as pronounced and dominant as it used to be earlier on in the year.
We're doing our best.
I know, but other life must go on.
Yeah, but it's interesting that during the campaigning, the peak of the campaigning activities and all, we've had others raise concerns about how the political parties were conducting affairs in terms of campaigning, even though there were some bans in place. We didn't see people adhering to it. The NCCE was not worried about that.
We're worried. We actually released, if I'm not mistaken, 2 press statements to that effect, cautioning people and particularly addressing political actors. In fact, in one of the press, one of it, it was a press conference with the Ghana Medical Association, and because we're caught up in the fever of elections, it kind of got drowned in all the conversation around the business of elections. And so we were worried that even, you know, the kind of attention that we thought should be address to this. We didn't get that kind of attention, but nonetheless, on the ground, our staff continued to raise them. So COVID was riding on the back of elections at every engagement. So we'll talk about all the engagements around the elections, but would also remind citizens at each and every point that COVID is still real. So our jingles and our adverts around
You're still on the ground. You still have the cinema vans that were giving by the Pentecost Church?
The cinema, no, we don't have it. But the Church of Pentecost was kind enough to come back to us with some of their vans during elections, and it was because of the conduct of elections plus the complexity of COVID during elections, and we are still very grateful to the Church of Pentecost for the amazing show of goodwill towards the Commission. So the vans are still around. There are very few vans that we own as a commission, but Church of Pentecost, of course, came to complement us, and that went a long way. For now, we don't have those vans, but we have one brand new one now, and that is still on the ground because we are still very much into our post-election engagements across the country.
Okay. Yeah. We'll get into the number of questions that have come in so far, but as we get into that, I'm sure most of them election 2020 dominated, but I would first want to find out the official assessment, your own reading and learning when it comes to post-election 2020, from where you stand from the NCCE. What actually is it?
So we've been doing this for some 28 years. I mean, since 1992, I think as a country, in terms of having free, fair and transparent elections, each year we've kind of enhanced and lifted our game to the point where within the sub-region, we're considered, you know, as the dominant country to go to when it comes to elections and the go-to country to learn from. And so 2020, in terms of the voting process, we came out even with a statement then to say the voting process had been fair, it had been seamless. You didn't see a lot of incidents arising out of it. You had less crowds, and typically we had a situation room, and our situation room was picking up on information and incidents that were going on.
Had people on the ground as well?
Yes, we had 1,300 observers on the ground, and we collaborated with West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP, as well as the National Peace Council. We co-chaired with the National Peace Council on the National Elections Response Group, and our observers fed into our situation room and the situation room of WANEP and MPC as well. So on the whole, during elections, we're very active in terms of what was going on. We're picking the information in real time. We were also monitoring most of our media stations as well, because what we were doing then was, where our staff couldn't be, if we heard something from the media, we would then ask a member of staff in a particular district, go, I hear this, can you find out more? And then we're, you know, collaborating with other actors in the space of elections. So when it comes to what happened between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., it was, you know, I was proud to be Ghanaian. I was like, wow, we've done it again. We've done it better, and we're going to move forward. I mean, I always say that every time we've had elections, we've learned our weaknesses, we've built on our strengths, and by the time we are moving into the next cycle of elections, you can only expect that it is enhanced. The conduct of elections is enhanced. You can only expect that you would have a more discerning citizenry, and I think we saw that. But after 5 p.m., when you had different parties, you know, telling us or announcing that we had this number of seats, we had this, then it was beginning to more or less kind of unravel, and you were beginning to wonder what actually is going on. We need our political parties to hold themselves together, especially the two dominant ones, wait for the state institution that is properly assigned the authority and the role to make some of these declarations, to make them, and then allow for the citizenry, you know, to be relaxed. But we kind of saw things unravel differently, and to that extent, of course, it's elections. It's a competitive playing field, and of course, it's a game of numbers. So for any party which thinks that the numbers don't add up, for me, they would begin to be agitated about it. But
you think they went ahead of themselves?
The two political parties, I think they did, and it's not the first time that we've seen this happen. And I think going forward, we need to engage our political parties more in terms of being more circumspect in some of these endeavors, because the fallout may not be very pleasant for all of us. And so, you know, if we want state institutions to work as well, we need to give them the space to carry out their role, because we have reposed that confidence in them. We've allowed them to carry on the conduct of elections, not just the Electoral Commission, the EC, other parties to the conduct of elections, the security agencies. They've all played out their role. Let them finish that role, and then let them declare the results. But when you come out and then either party is saying something and both are contrary to the other, then you begin to send signals of agitation. And I think to that extent, the political parties need to take a second look at what they do. And it's for all state actors to begin to engage the political parties and be more forceful in our code of conduct for political parties in elections, in saying that you are more or less banned from saying anything until the EC has come out to announce. And when it has done so, whatever you have, you can then come to the public and express your concerns or otherwise.
Okay, so these political parties, at least we've heard from the opposition, prior to the elections, they had raised some red flags, concerns about the referee in this whole, game, or should I say the election. They had raised concerns about it. It appears that nobody was listening to them, according to them.
Yeah.
And do you think that as the referee in this, which is the Electoral Commission, you've talked about the fact that we have to repose our confidence in them, their conduct in the lead up to it and after, do you think it matches up to the confidence that we reposed in them?
Well, I think sometimes we hear a side of a story and you may not necessarily hear the other side. And so I'd like to reserve my comments at this point, but only to say that the system or the framework of governance involves the cooperation and collaboration of all parties. And I don't mean political parties, but I mean everybody that has a role to play must be seen to be cooperating with each other, because we must understand that the system of governance, when we talk about peace, peace is not just an end, it is the means to an end. So at every point and at every step, we must conduct ourselves bearing in mind what are the consequences of my actions, whether I'm a state institution, whether I'm a political party, whether I'm a CSO, whether I'm another independent governance institution. But what does my conduct connote? Does it nurture peace, or does it lead to people being disgruntled? And I think that should guide us. And as much as possible, we should look beyond just one institution and look at the bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture is Ghana. What is it that inures to the benefit of all Ghanaians? And democracy itself is competitive, and competition naturally leads to some form of conflict. It's a matter of course, but how you conduct yourselves in the conflict is what we should be concerned about. So I'm not so concerned about people raising red flags, but it is to maybe how you raise the red flag and how that red flag, how people responded or reacted to the red flag. These are the things that we should be concerned about, because whether we like it or not, whatever one person does is not going to be acceptable to universally. So we must always bear that in mind, that conflicts will arise. It is natural. I mean,
and it has arisen. At least we're seeing that happening. But what do you say about the conduct of all sides within this conflict? Because you've talked about how you handle the conflict when it arises.
Yes.
So far, the conduct of all sides in this conflict, what's your own take on it?
What's my take on it? I think my take, of course, will be, we said in our communique, we wanted to see all state institutions acting dispassionately, acting objectively, and continuing to allow the confidence of the citizenry to be reposed in them. Then again, we also must bear in mind that you cannot begrudge somebody for rejecting a certain position. You can't begrudge them. In fact, the Constitution gives us that right. It's part of democracy, and that is how democracy thrives. But I think that in all of this, what we're all looking for is what is it that continues to hold our stability and unity in this country. Because if you read the preamble of our Constitution, that is the collective affirmation of us as Ghanaians. As a corporate body, we said that we want the preservation and protection of our fundamental human rights and freedoms, as well as our unity and stability. That is the fundamental, the foundation of our democratic journey. And so all we ask as a commission is that whatever we do, we should be mindful of that corporate affirmation we have taken, that commitment we have made to our choice of democracy, and understand, does it inure to the benefit of Ghanaians in terms of stability and unity? And by all means, if it does, nobody can begrudge anyone. But what it is that heightens tension, that causes that peace and stability to be threatened, is what we would caution against. Because for NCCE, our role is to sustain democracy through the awareness of rights and responsibilities. So whatever the Constitution, within the framework of the Constitution, allows people to express themselves, and expressing yourself either to accept or reject something is part of your constitutional right. But in so doing, we must ensure that peace and democracy go hand in hand. The moment there is a lack of it, the other part is threatened. So when there is no peace, democracy is threatened. Most likely, when there's no democracy, there may not be peace. And so to that extent, we hold peace dear to the building blocks of our democracy. And that is why the Commission is laying emphasis on the word peace. So if you look at our messaging and our engagements with the citizenry throughout the election cycle, the key message was peace. The key message was peace because, don't forget, between 2018 and 2019, we had seen the topical issue of vigilantism and the drivers of vigilantism. And NCCE, after consultations with quite a number of stakeholders, we had a whole bouquet of the drivers of vigilantism. And so we had seen some of the signs already that, you know, if anything is triggered, it can spiral into something very unpleasant for us as a nation. And so we wanted everybody to understand that let us do all it takes so that the bedrock of peace remains in our country. Yes, so that for us was key to our role in ensuring that democracy thrives.
Okay, yeah. So of course there are calls also that what is peace without justice? You can't attain peace without offering justice as well. One side is peeved, they've rejected the results, but we've heard Peace Council, NCCE, all these institutions, all you're calling for is peace, without asking for justice or justice to be served to all sides as well. But that's one thing that we'll be looking at. But let me not create a conflict with our audience by bringing in their questions at this point. Many of them they've sent in so far is via WhatsApp. You can send them all, so you can leave it on Facebook or pick them up. But let's get into the first batch of them. This one is from Winston. He says, don't you think you have failed as part of your civic responsibility in terms of sensitizing and educating the citizenry considering the violence and tension following the election 2020? That's one question in via WhatsApp. We'll take the next one also. This is from Armstrong. He says, what has the NCCE done so far to sensitize the people in the wake of the rising tension? We'll stay on WhatsApp a while longer. Okay, we have this one from Hannah. It says, beyond issuing statements and asking people to eschew violence, has the NCCE reached out to the feuding sides? Hannah sends that one in. The final batch for this one, the final one for this batch, he says, Bismarck says, what is the NCCE's view about the posturing of the Electoral Commission? Okay, so some of the questions that have come in. So the first one is, Winston is asking, do you think the NCC has failed when it comes to your civic responsibility in terms of sensitizing the people, considering the violence that we've seen after election 2020?
I don't think NCC has failed. We continue to do our work as we ought to do. As I said to you earlier, I said that peace is the means to an end. And the issue is not that conflict has arisen. It is how we respond to that conflict and how we bring together the parties, those who are aggrieved, those who are not aggrieved, and ensure that we are able to use peace-building mechanisms so that justice is served. Now, has NCC failed? No.
In terms of educating, because
in terms of
if the people know what the right thing is, they will not resort to violence, even though they've rejected.
I'm sure their
leaders have rejected.
Sometimes these are, excuse me, but sometimes they're very simplistic to say that the fact that I've given education to somebody, that in itself is not the end of the matter. You have done your part. But there are other drivers that also compel someone to take a certain position. And some of the other drivers are not necessarily the right drivers. Some of it has to do with the kinds of persons they are influenced by. Some of it is driven purely by, let me say, hunger. Some of it is driven by anger. And all of these things contribute to how people react to circumstances that they find themselves in. So for NCC, let me focus on what we are doing. Prior to elections, we had our Interparty dialogue committees. And our Interparty dialogue committees are set up at both the district and regional levels. So you have representation of all the parties, or the parties that avail themselves to the committee. You have representation from civil society, from the media, security agencies, the independent governance institutions themselves, traditional authorities, the clergy, the Muslim community. All of them have representation on our Interparty dialogue committees. What they do is to nip in the bud things that can escalate into violence or conflict. And we used these platforms to resolve a lot of issues on the ground. Maybe because they are niggling problems as they arise. They don't come into the public space as you would expect some, or you would assume, because at that level, the parties on that committee are able to discuss dispassionately, they are able to reason out, and they are able to speak to their supporters on the ground. Listen, hold your fire, or this is really the reason why this is happening. They're able to dialogue over matters.
Do you get the sense that that has been done?
it is a continuous thing, so it's not something that has ended. So I think even was it last week or so, we had some of the chairpersons of our inter-party dialogue committees, particularly those who were from the faith-based organizations. There were instructions across to use their positions in churches and in the mosque to continue to preach the message of peace. But of course, it goes beyond just people who are in the faith-based organizations. After elections, critical to the work that NCCE does is post-elections. So we don't play at all. We don't relax when it comes to elections. Right after the elections, we're already on the ground assessing for ourselves what happened during elections, and that guiding us in what kind of education should go around. So if you check our social media platforms, even we continue to speak the message of peace. We continue to ask people to heed the voice of reason and allow for processes to be completed. And we did not only do this with the citizenry. We, for instance, under the National Elections Response Group that I spoke to you about earlier, where we had the National Peace Council and ONEP and the NCCE, we right in as late as about almost midnight, we were with the EC because we had information on the ground because of our observers.
When is that, on election day?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, elections had the voting process had ended. We were still working. We're still getting information after election day, and we were using that to drive our education on the ground. So we haven't at all reneged on our responsibility, and we would continue to speak. When it comes to what have we done with the parties, one of our thematic areas, or the role that NCCE has for itself, is peace building and conflict resolution. And sometimes it's not everything that you're doing that you come out in the public space to talk about, but only to say that if we anticipate and see ourselves as complementing the role of National Peace Council and playing some sort of mediation role, then we really must not be out there saying who we've met, who we haven't met, what we are doing and what we are not doing. Some of these things may be very informal, so I will not necessarily meet an institution or a party or anything, but you'll be speaking to particular personalities who drive certain decisions at all levels, and those are the things that we may be doing. So we won't come out and say that yes, we are doing. I mean, the
working in the background.
We can be working, yes, in the background.
On this particular issue.
Yes.
So you've met, because there was a question I was asking whether you met the feuding sites.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying, but only to say that we understand our role as also complementing the mediation efforts of the National Peace Council. And to that extent, it's important that the issues of confidentiality remain and not...
But so far, have they cooperated, though?
I think so. I think sometimes it's not what you see, people doing, sometimes it's just for show, what you see on TV and hear in the news, but the real work is done behind the scenes. And so I don't want for people to lose hope that state institutions are not up to the task, but it's not everything that must come out to say, we must come out to, tell the public that we're doing.
But previously, to the extent that previously, we've had institutions like yours, the Peace Council, ONEP, and the rest of them, come out openly to say when it's wrong or to say when it is right.
Yeah.
But it appears that in instances like this, at least we've had leadership of the NDC say that when it comes to them, it appears that nobody is speaking up for them. All we hear is calls for peace, call your supporters to order, but nobody is actually sitting with them to understand what exactly their concerns are. They've asked for retabulation, in some cases tabulation and all. They've raised concerns, they've picketed, they are on protest as one part of the options available to them. But what they all hear, at least we've heard from the National House of Chiefs, the Peace Council, all they hear is calls for peace, but the part about justice is not coming, and that's the concern for one side.
Well, as I said earlier, sometimes we assume that peace is the end, is the end game, but peace is the means to the end. What the NDC is seeking is justice. And what we are saying is that let's use all peaceful avenues to arrive at. And so when you talk about using peaceful avenues to arrive at justice, it does not necessarily, it's not to curtail your rights as laid down under the Constitution, but only to say that within those rights, we all know we have the constraints of law and order as well, and that is what we seek.
Okay, so there was one also asking what the NCC's view is about the posturing of the Electoral Commission.
What is their posturing?
Yes, Bismarck is asking that.
I want to ask Bismarck what their posturing is.
They're asking the NCCE.
Yeah, so he is talking of my view of their posturing. So he should tell me what their posturing is that will allow me to respond to his comments.
So far, they are the referee in all this. You've heard both sides. Like you said, you've interacted extensively with the EC, all stakeholders in all this. As the independent referee, which is the Electoral Commission, whom you share a wall with.
We share premises with.
Okay, premises.
Yes.
So what is your take when it comes to their posturing so far in all this, pre and post elections?
I think not everything you do would suit anybody. And to that extent, we continue to say that state institutions must work objectively and dispassionately. We need to continue to play our role in a manner that does not allow for people to doubt that we work for the people of Ghana. And that, for me, is fundamental to what we do. It is public service. Let us serve in a way that people continue to hold these institutions as institutions that they trust, that they have confidence in. And for me, that would be my comment on that question.
Okay, so I'm sure you were trying to speak to Armstrong's question, but what he was asking is, what has the NCCE done so far to sensitize the people in the wake of the rising tension?
Okay, so like I said, we're still on the ground doing our post-elections engagements, and that will continue usually into the first quarter of the ensuing year. So we'll continue to be working with the people. We'll be using our IPDCs, we'll be using our political party youth activist platforms as well. So before elections, they are one of our key stakeholders when it comes to engagements over elections. And as it is, with what has unfolded, we would have to continue to engage them so that they appreciate you. Whilst they are able to articulate their concerns to you, you can also play the voice of reason and ensure that we are using peace-building mechanisms in order to be responsive to the concerns that have been raised. And so it's a continuum. We haven't finished the work. So it's not like elections have finished and that's it. No. There's even more to do now than ever, and that is what we would continue to do as a commission.
Okay, but how responsive has it been so far in terms of the responses you're getting from the sensitization?
I think that when you look at what you hear in the public space, we want peace, so that's what we want. We Ghanaians are a peace-loving people. We want peace. But the peace that we talk about is not only a role for state institutions. It is a role for every citizen. The Constitution says that it is the duty of every citizen to foster national unity and live in harmony with others. That's Article 41C. We are enjoined to do that. We are also enjoined by that same Article 41 to defend the Constitution against all forms of abuse. I'm raising this matter to put into context the unfolding of elections, and to say that if we don't sit up and hear each other out, there are elements beyond us that will prey on us. During vigilantism, the talk on vigilantism, one of the key things that came out from security experts was that the issue of vigilantism goes beyond our borders. And once vigilantism begins to thrive or you see elements of violence picking up in any country, that is when you have violent extremism from outside seeping inside, taking hold and making use of the fertile ground that we ourselves have presented as ourselves with. Now, let me tell you, there's a difference between what happened in 2012 and what is happening in 2020. 2012, the NPP, they rejected the results. Yeah. And there was talk about what are they going to do? They went to court. Okay? The issues around, or the other elements that are prevalent today were not so prevalent then. What are these matters? These are matters of secessionism. These are matters of violent extremism. And these are things that we must begin to talk about. So NCCE is talking about these things not to sound so negative, but only to open our eyes to the fact that these things exist. And in as much as we are confronted with something similar in 2012, we now have a more prevalent situation of secessionism, and we've seen what unfolded, earlier on in this year. And then we have to deal with violent extremism, which is going to be one of the key things we're doing next year on raising our awareness around violence, extremism, and trying to build a cohesive society. So we have elections like this, and then there were calls on, okay, nobody begrudges your right to demonstrate, but the issues of public law and order are aspects that were important for us to talk about. So we saw what happened, for instance, in Techiman. And when you are aware of the data that the Small Arms Commission provides to us, of the amount of ammunition and arms in this country, we must not at all be doing anything that threatens or allows for cracks to begin to build. So these are things that are very important and crucial to us sustaining the peace and stability of this nation. We must understand that our political stability has been one of the most attractive things to foreign investments. That is why you see the level of investments in Ghana, which is probably not comparable to most of our neighboring countries. But these are the things that have held us together. And once these things take a hold, once we allow from outside violent extremism because we have provided a fertile ground, once we allow for secessionism to begin to take hold, then everybody is going to leverage on these negativities. And when the inflows of extremism come in, it would have escalated out of control. And that's why the message of peace is of utmost importance to the Commission at this time. Okay. It is because in these particular times, there are other factors that are very important, which we must not ignore and which we must all come together as one and hold our own as a country, so we don't allow ourselves to be caught up from outside invasions. Okay, I'm sure that Armstrong, Hannah, and Winston's question, as well as Bismarck's, has been answered satisfactorily. We'll get into more of your questions right after this break, right here on The Probe. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us here on The Probe. If only you knew what we were talking about behind the scenes with Madam Josephine Nkrumah, a chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, the NCCE. More of your questions. Let me go through them. It's via WhatsApp. This one turned out upside down a bit, but it's asking what you continue to do with regards to election. I hope you will consider looking at why we still have high numbers of rejected votes. Okay. This Apao GC
has also sent that question. Okay. What do you think accounts for rejected? I think it was the fourth after GUM, after NPP, NDC, GUM, and then rejected ballots before the rest of the other political parties. What's accounting for that? I
think one of our previously, not the immediate one, it was the third. So this time it's the fourth.
Yes.
So GUM came and did better than rejected. But on a more serious note, the Commission is certainly concerned with it, given the fact that we had stepped up education on thumbprinting the ballot papers correctly. We still were amazed at the level of rejected ballots. I think before elections, one of the key concerns of the Commission, and indeed something that we even raised in Parliament, was that same issue of our concern on rejected ballots. The ballot paper was really long, and so that in itself lent to, you know, people doing the wrong thing. And sometimes when people do this, when people thumbprint wrongly, they don't have the confidence to even go and ask for another ballot paper.
Oh, they can?
So there is a difference between the rejected ballots and then the spoiled ballots. So the spoiled ballots are ballots that a voter may have messed up and says that, listen, I've messed up this ballot, I want to dispose of it, and then you give me a new ballot so that I can cast my vote. And
I'm sure many people don't know that.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. And so we try and explain the difference to them, so that if you see you've made a mistake, go back, ask for another. It's your right. You have every opportunity and every right to ask.
It won't amount to double vote.
No, it won't amount, because there's a place you would put that as a spoiled ballot, and then rejected ballot is something that you've thumbprinted. It's gone in the ballot box, but at the time of counting, it is rejected because of the way you appended your thumb to the ballot paper, which makes it difficult or inconclusive to determine who you actually, or which candidate you actually voted for.
Okay.
So that is, you know, just for the difference between spoiled and rejected ballots. So as I said earlier, we had raised concerns about the likelihood of seeing an increase in rejected ballots. I think in 2016 there was a 50% reduction in rejected ballots, but in 2020 it shot out of the roof again. Many people have attributed a number of factors to rejected ballots. A lot of people would come and would hold the view that, oh, NCCE didn't do enough education, and that is why you have rejected ballots. But of course, there are people, some of the observers, who even noticed that somebody would stand in the, you literally could tell from a distance that the person was appending his or her signature to more than one candidate. Okay, and people have looked at it from superstitious angles, that when people take monies from political actors and candidates from more than one person, and you are made to swear oaths, it's difficult for you not to vote for them, so they will vote for everybody because they've taken money. So it's really a complex matter, and it's not as simple as people not getting the right education. People get the education, but for other reasons, they may do something differently. And I think this year, I heard one other political scientist speaking about the issue of protest votes. So somebody doesn't really want to vote, and that was one of the things we're concerned. Some people were
queue the whole time.
Yes, you queue and say, why should I? So I'll queue and I'll just do whatever and put it in. You say I should come and vote. I've voted, and that is what it is. So there's there are different reasons why you have rejected ballots, but to also say categorically that civic and voter education is one of the thematic areas of the Commission.
Yeah.
And voter education is important to us to the extent that it allows for Ghanaians to express their aspirations and see their aspirations realized through the conduct of elections. And that is one of the characteristics of democracy, competitive elections. So that is important for us. But to say that the core work in terms of voter education is for the Electoral Commission. We as a commission complement the Electoral Commission whose core role or core mandate is to do voter education. That every time there's rejected ballots, you never hear them talk about the Electoral Commission or the NCCE, but go into the Constitution, educate yourself, go into the enabling statute of the Commission, educate yourself, and you won't find it there. But we understand as a Commission that if democracy should thrive and if we need to sustain it, which is our core mandate, then it's important for us to be interested in voter education. And to that extent, we take voter education very seriously. But to just clear that misconception that it is our core work, no, it is not. But we understand how important voter education and voter conduct is in ensuring that democracy thrives in Ghana.
But to what extent does the NCCE and EC collaborate when it comes to voter education and civic education, for instance, when it comes to elections? This particular one?
Yes, as two sister institutions, I think there's room for improvement in terms of the collaboration that you should see between the two institutions as we execute our respective mandates. So you see an appreciable level of collaboration at the district levels, especially where you have district directors of the two sister institutions having a certain rapport. You see that they are on each other's platforms. So, for instance, like I said, we have our IPDCs, Interparty Dialogue Committees. The EC is represented there. So when we have other platforms, we invite the EC, they come, they take us through the CI at the time, they take us through the electoral offenses, and we give them that platform to use to educate. Likewise, if the EC is conducting any engagement, they will invite the district director and officers at the district level to participate in it. So you see that, but I think there is real room for
and that's at the district level. How about the national level?
At the national level, I think there's a lot more we can do together. There's a lot more, frankly, I think we should be doing together as two institutions so that we complement each other's role and we ensure that ultimately our services really benefit the people of Ghana. And I'm hoping that in 2021 and beyond, we would be able to learn from some of these weaknesses, plug into them, and build a stronger relationship at the national level that cascades downwards and drives real on-the-field collaboration between the two institutions. So I do concede that there is a lot more that the NCCE and the EC can do together to enhance the conduct of elections.
Is the NCCE at fault for that?
No, I wouldn't say either party is at fault. Sometimes it's just the busyness of the everyday things that we do.
But if voter education is very important to both institutions,
yes, we must
not be too busy.
We should not be too busy to
collaborate on that.
To do that. I do agree with you, and I am hoping that next year and beyond, we should find that very critical space to do that very important exercise of collaborating better.
So I have some more questions. This one is asking about whether you have enough staff on the ground to do the work or execute the mandate that the Constitution has given you.
Okay, so I joined the NCC in 2015. I remember when I joined, our manpower ceiling was 1,767. At a point, we had barely 1,300. By, I think, close of last year, in my entire space and journey in NCC, I think we'd only been able to employ 45 people, to replace 45 people. And if you look at the strength of the strength of the numbers that we have, it meant that whilst we had quite a number of our staff exiting through retirements, resignations, death, we were not replacing staff as we ought to do. So our staff strength was really dwindling, and that was a real worry. So for each district at the time, that should have had about 7 or 8 members of staff in an office. Even as we speak, we have a few numbers. Some offices even have 1 or 2 to a whole district. And if a district has 100,000 plus, what can you do? It becomes a challenge for us. And it was even more pronounced because in 2007, when we first had this manpower ceiling, I think our population, if I'm not mistaken, was about 18 million. And right now we are about 30 million. Mm-hmm. So that should tell you. But I'm happy to say that in 2020, we were able to replace, I think, 240 members of staff. And so we are beginning to fill in. I'm hoping that it will get better. And in the next year or two, we should be able to meet our manpower ceiling, and that really will also strengthen the hand of the Commission, allowing us to reach communities in a manner that everybody benefits from the services that we are mandated to offer to the good people of Ghana. So staff strength has been one of our challenges, but 2020 saw that we were able to replace some of it.
But that's not the only challenge. I think resources also.
Yes,
you are under-resourced.
Yeah, well, we are under-resourced, but I just wanted to finish off with this. So one of the things we do is also leverage on the national service. So with the national service personnel, we write to the national service scheme, and we are able to get national service personnel posted to some of our district offices, and for the time that they are there, they complement the staff strength of some of our offices. Only that there are some of the districts where nobody wants to go to, and sometimes you would find it difficult to get service personnel posted there, and so that is some of the challenges that we have. But we are hoping that we would continue to see what we saw this year, and in the years to come, we would be able to lift up our numbers in terms of our staff strength. And then you asked something on our resources. So I think 2020, in honesty, has been a good year for the Commission. Oh. It's been a good year for the Commission because we have benefited from the goodwill of people. We've benefited from Church of Pentecost we spoke about. We've benefited from Oxfam, Comfort, One Ghana movement, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund, the COVID-19 Private Sector Trust Fund, from individuals at the district level, at the regional level, from private corporate entities supporting some of our offices, Asunafo Corporate Farmers Union. We've actually seen an expression of goodwill from Ghanaians, and it really warms my heart because it tells me that people actually believe in the Commission. We believe there's a lot we have to offer, and they also understand the limitations we have in terms of resources. And in the times of COVID, they stood up to support us. And I think beyond that, in 2020, we actually had the President himself personally intervene in the affairs of the Commission to ensure that we were given enough resources or some level of resources to play the very pivotal role of awareness raising to prevent the rise in COVID-19 cases.
COVID has been a blessing in disguise.
It really, I'm being very honest. It has been, and like I said, it's like wow. So some people did not even give in terms of material resources, but we had a coalition of CSOs who stood up and issued a statement for and on behalf of the Commission challenging government to ensure that they resource a key national institution such as ours. And it worked. And we saw the media. They called us, they spoke to us, and our voices got heard. And so people rose up and began to say, why are you not resourcing NCCE in this time? You need to resource them. What happened? We had some 50 vehicles lent to us for a period of time. Something we haven't seen since 2012. We haven't bought any vehicle in the Commission since 2012. Whilst we didn't buy these cars, at least the government gave us these cars for a period of time to work with. They took 25 later on for other government assignments, but we still have 25. And if you look at the number of officers, we have 277, and you have barely 100 vehicles. It makes it very difficult. But COVID, for once, the narrative on resourcing the NCCE changed during COVID, and I am hoping that people began to understand that the Commission has a very important role to play, and when attention is given to us, we would rise to the task and we would see democracy thrive in a way that makes it an enviable record across the continent.
We hope it stays even after COVID. But prior to these interventions that you talk about,
yes,
there were those who thought that the NCCE has outlived its usefulness. What would you say to them?
I think it's so wrong. I think it's so wrong because the framers of the Constitution who decided that it was such an important part of our democratic journey so as to make it a constitutional or an institution that has been set up by the Constitution, and not only set up, it's an entrenched provision of the Constitution. And so even before you can what do you call it, say that NCCE has become redundant, you need a referendum to do that. It tells you the importance of civic education. And I think when we begin to understand the value of civic education, we won't find ourselves in some of the situations we find ourselves today. Because if you look at our whole Constitution, that actually gives us a broad spectrum of rights and responsibilities of every citizen, that sets up institutions of governance and arms of government to enable the whole architecture of democracy work, then you understand that the citizenry are central and pivotal to all of this working. But I think that most of the time our understanding of democracy and even the way we apportion resources to our democratic institutions, we've made it look like a matter of elections. So 4 years comes, hey, everybody's democracy, you go out and you vote. We don't understand that it's just one of the characteristics of elections. Civic education is key. If we are to have the kinds of leaps and bounds we want to see in national development, then we must be spending more on civic education so that every Ghanaian understands that what I say and what I do, that it's very important. Understand that participatory democracy is what will take us to the next level. We talk about things like Ghana Beyond Aid. Ghana Beyond Aid will never happen in a vacuum. Ghana Beyond Aid takes the efforts of all of us. What kind of values do we have as a people, and how does that drive the process of becoming truly independent and not dependent on, donor aid? So I think civic education will continue to play a role, but it will only be as important as what we allow it to be. And by that I mean what kind of resources are made available to it, what kind of focus is given to it. So for instance, when it comes to election, every day you have media knocking on the doors of NCCE. But after elections, it's difficult because we all see elections as democracy, but democracy goes way beyond elections, and it's not a matter only for Ghana. I think even to the ECOWAS, we've made representations for them to understand how it's important to institutionalize civic education so that as a continent, we understand that the greatest force we have is the psyche of our people. Okay. If we don't understand it, we're going nowhere.
Okay, but I would briefly want to find out from you why you think that governments over the period not really paid attention to the NCCE. I have some questions we'll get into, but I need you to give me a brief answer.
I've had a few private conversations with some political actors, and they'll tell you that, enlightening the people is not beneficial to the game of politics. I mean, you've had that. I've had cause to ask certain people, why is it that you spend next to nothing on civic education? So in one particular year, I remember, I think, was it in 2016, our budget for the year was 1,056,000 cedis. and other institutions were getting 100 times that amount of money. How effective do you expect us to be?
They don't want the ordinary person to be enlightened.
Sometimes that is what, and then sometimes they say, you know, in the grand scheme of things, civic education is not a priority. So it's not been a priority for many governments that have come in and out. But I think in these times, now more than ever, everybody say, what is NCCE doing? Question, did you ask, what was NCCE given to do? What kind of resources were we given? How were those resources allocated to us? Were they made available to us on time? All of these things are important questions that we must begin to ask ourselves. And ask ourselves that, is democracy just a matter of elections, or it's a matter of the governance of our country on a day-to-day business? And if we answer correctly, in my estimation, that democracy is something that goes beyond elections. It's the choices we make every day, how we hold people accountable, how we live up to our responsibilities, how we exercise our rights, and how institutions of government and governance work. Then we will truly appreciate the very important role of civic education.
Okay, we'll go back to WhatsApp and take some more of your questions that you've sent in. This one from Ayete says, as part of pursuing peace, the NCCE in collaboration with the Peace Council should ban all political parties from declaring results ahead of the Electoral Commission. So that's Ayete. We'll go on to this one, has no name. He says, what's the role of the NCCE in ensuring that the citizenry differentiates between political rights from right to peace? And then Kofi from Joje says, please ask the chairperson of the NCCE what they are doing to stay one step ahead of politicians in educating the electorate on role of MPs and the president ahead of elections to forestall excessive promises, which is becoming a threat to our democracy. Interesting. That's from Kofi in Joje. We have, okay, so I think she's Joje again, Kofi again. It says, if the under-resourced nature of the commission affects its work, staff and confidence it has to enjoy from all its stakeholders, including the political parties, communities which are more resourceful than the state institution like NCCE. I'm not really getting it, but I'm sure he's talking about your under-resourced, the issues that we've been talking about. Now, Paul says, I want a candid answer on whether or not the NCCE is funded adequately to carry out its mandate. Paul, we've just been talking about that, but I would ask Madam Josephine Nkrumah again, candid answer on that. Okay, so that's Paul's question. We have another one from Patrick. So what is your say on the case of Techiman during the voting? Patrick. Okay, so some of your questions there. So maybe we'll start with Paul. He was asking about your candid answer. Since we're talking about issues about how the NCCE resources and all, candid answer, do you think that you're funded enough?
No, we are not.
You're not?
We're not funded enough. And I don't think it's peculiar to the NCCE. But given the broad mandate we have and the expectations that is placed on the commission, I think that there's a lot more that can go to the commission to allow us to fulfill those expectations. So in my candid opinion, we've never been adequately funded. We've had a few good years, and perhaps 2020 has been one of such years. I think, if I may state, I think it was under the presidency of John Agyekum Kufuor that the commission saw the greatest level of logistics resourcing to the commission.
That's 2000, 2004.
Yes, yes. Okay. And then after that, we had some comparably good funding from, or logistic support from JA Mills as well. Okay. So those are two periods that really stand out, where, you know, our work demands, it's a lot of legwork. You need to go out to the community. So a lot of the time, our challenge is accessing those communities because we don't have the vehicles to do so. And in those 2 times these particular times, we had a huge fleet of vehicles that were given to the commission, and that really went a long way. But after that, I don't think we've seen that kind of support. Yes.
Okay, so we have this one from Patrick Techiman. That was the very last one. Was asking what your take is on Techiman exactly during the voting. What your say on that case is.
Well,
Techiman is still in the news. Techiman is South, right after it, and now
Techiman is still in the news, and it's a fluid case and it's still ongoing. So I'll reserve my comments.
Why so?
I'll reserve my comments. I told you that part of our work is mediation.
We have debts there.
We have debts there, and that is one of them.
The results from the parliamentary election.
I think I'll speak about the debts to say that having come this far as a nation, it was one of the saddest days to hear that people actually lost their lives over elections. I mean, after 2016 in particular, I was proud to say that, wow, this is how far we've come. And so 2020, we're going into 2020, we had some niggling doubts, but we didn't expect to see this kind of thing that unfolded in Techiman. And to lose even a finger over elections is unacceptable. So to lose some 6 or 7 now, I think 6 or 7 lives, it's inexcusable, it's unacceptable, and I think that we need a probe into that Techiman incident to understand what led to this. How did things come out of control, and why were lives lost? I think I've been asked if I thought the police were the right institution to conduct an investigation into this, and shouldn't it be an independent body? I mean, we've seen independent bodies conduct, like in the commissions of inquiry. We saw what happened in Ayawaso, and frankly, we didn't see a lot come out of it. Stemming from that, we saw the Vigilantism Act, and I'm sad to say, a beautiful act as we saw, and one of the key things that the law provided that vigilante groups disband, and within a certain time frame, and there's total silence on that. So for me, are
they still in business, you
pardon?
think? Are they still in business, you think? Because these political parties tell us that they've disbanded them.
That's what they say. We haven't seen any formal disbandment, but even the formal disbandment, to me, the question was it disbandment in essence? I can come and disband because I'm called Apache group today, and tomorrow, as somebody was providing some lectures to the NCCE, tomorrow they'll call it Canadian Prayer Group or something like that. And then what are you going to say? So those are the loopholes. But on a very serious note, I honestly think that the police should do a good job of this for us.
So you think that the police are the right group? You think that they should probe this?
I'm saying that
for a probe, and you believe
I'm
that
saying
they should?
that we had Ayawaso, and we had a commission of inquiry that made so many recommendations, and we didn't see a lot of that implemented. And so I'm wondering, yes, I'm wondering how spending resources on that is going to, going to come up with something. Let them, with the police, and let them do that. And for the police, I think that if we're going to build the kind of confidence we need in our Ghana Police Service, then they should do that kind of investigation that is transparent, and we see real consequences where there should be consequences for people, because it is just wrong at this time in our nation's history to hear that 6 people died because of elections in a polling station.
Okay, but you've talked about the deaths, though.
Yes,
but there are also concerns about the results from the parliamentary polls.
Yes, they're supposed to be.
Since we are still there.
Yes, it's still a matter in court, or it's
not yet. The NDC is asking for a tabulation of the results from that place, because from their pin sheets, what they have tells them that they won that seat.
Well, pink sheets were
petition the EC.
Yes, and I think that the EC should be able to respond to this. There should be some what's it called, collaboration and cooperation between these parties so that we understand really what happened there. There is a returning officer there. What role did he play? How effective was he? And sometimes even our own political parties have also not fully played their role as responsible actors to the conduct of elections. And I'm not talking even in reference to Techiman or in reference to violence, so to speak. But excuse my language, sometimes the shenanigans you hear that goes on in some of the polling stations, you know, it's quite distasteful. And so we should be able to move beyond that, and our political parties must employ people with a sense of integrity, a sense of doing what is right, and understand that they have a responsibility not only to their supporters and to their party, but to the people of Ghana, in order to ensure that the aspirations of Ghanaians is reflected in results. Okay. Not so a distortion.
We'll take some more of the questions that we haven't responded to all. So there was one that was talking about political rights versus right to peace.
I'm still trying to
education
political right to peace. I think we'll find out a little more about that. Yes, and what he says, he wants to find out the difference or
what we're doing in terms of the education for it. I'm sure we'll bring back that question on political rights and right to peace. And then we can get a clearer understanding on that. And then also the promises.
Yeah, promises.
That
and in fact, this year, vote buying was sickening. It was even more brazen, and people were buying political actors were buying people's conscience, and I say we're buying people's future. Any politician that offers you money to vote for him or her should tell you that that person ab initio is the wrong person to vote for. Yes, because it's wrong. The law clearly states that it is wrong. And people were accepting not just money, TVs, stoves, scholarships, all manner of things we were hearing in the public space about what was going on in the months and days leading up to elections. And I think that it is shameful, really, for political parties in this day and this time. What is it that you are not doing right? That you think that it is only when you offer somebody something that they must they are influenced to vote for you. But I think also this year it allowed us to see that the Ghanaians are becoming a little more discerning. Ghanaians are becoming more discerning, and we should not think that you can do anything to throw eyes in to throw sand in the eyes of the electorate and expect them to go blind. They will wash the sand out and come out and vote a certain pattern. I think 2016 was an eye-opener for politics in Ghana, and I think 2020 as well has been. We shouldn't take the Ghanaian electorate for granted anymore. And when
a surprise at the turnout with Parliament, for instance.
Yes, because I mean the turnout in Parliament, it was like, whoa. And
what does it tell you?
Well, it tells us that I think that we did a survey on corruption, and we're beginning to, I think, understand how Ghanaians may accept development and social interventions, infrastructural development, social interventions. They are thankful for it, but they do not forget that their money is at stake in the governance of this country. And so whilst they would appreciate that, when it comes to that, I think corruption is beginning to play a role in this.
Does it also tell you that our people want both the NDC and NPP to work together? at some point?
I don't know if I should say it's because they want them to work together or we are so split down the middle. You can look at it either way. But at least going forward, it tells us that consensus building is an absolute prerequisite if we're going to move this country forward in governance. I mean, I just want to see what will happen in Parliament, in the next Parliament. I really just want to see what will happen. And I don't even know if it is conclusive yet, considering that there are cases pending in court. You would see some numbers flip again. And I mean, it's still very fluid, but I think it's going to be an exciting time. And it's not going to be the usual matter of the minority will have their say, the majority will have their way. We've seen it in different governments to date. And this time round, we really must see that we are moving beyond a rubber stamp legislature that will just follow a party's line. But parliamentarians will begin to be objective in their reasoning, in their debates, and in their discourse in Parliament, and vote along the lines that benefit their constituents, and not just vote because this is where my party's position is. No, we must move from that, and that would see our democracy really begin to pick up in terms of a maturing democracy.
And oh boy, we're really out of time, but I think we have a minute to wrap up, and I'm sure both sides, this is a show that they all watch, the NDC, the NPP, the Electoral Commission, I'm sure they're all seated now watching. If you were in a dialogue, for instance, because of the issues that have come up, what will the NCCE's word be to all sides?
The NCC's words will be simple. Our theme for 2021 is Ghana First. We are one. That is our theme. We are one. Ghana First. So everybody should put behind them what their individual interests are and look at the bigger picture of Ghana, understanding how far we've come and where we are today, and the importance of remaining one united government in order to move our nation forward for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. Peace should remain with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Josephine Nkrumah is the chairperson of the NCCE, a nation on a quest for peace and justice. That's what we've been talking about tonight on The Probe, the very final edition of The Probe for the year 2020. A year it's been. Thank you so much for your company. Thanks so much for being with us. Through it all, grateful hearts as to that. I am MF Apau. Thank you so much for your company. Have a good day.